But then the boss lady told me, give me a gosh darn crotch rocket and make it fast, kiddo. And next thing I knew, I had to look at the silhouettes of these gosh dang crotch rockets.
So, DevStream 179 has just ended, which means we got a lot to talk about. Quick heads up, there is a double XP weekend in Warframe until the 29th, so make sure and don't miss out on that. But let's just get right into it. There is a very, very important segment in this video where Pablo will go over the upcoming armor and scaling rework that DE are currently working on, as well as the status buffs to unused status effects. As an example, cold procs will soon freeze enemies, and then when those enemies are fully frozen, they will take double critical damage. Blast damage apparently will soon be more blasty. These are massive proposed changes which will impact Warframe a lot. Enemy armor caps, effective health scaling of enemies, enemy shield changes, the skin types of enemies. A lot of things are going to change, so don't miss out on it. I will timestamp that, and I will make a separate video tomorrow going over all of the dev workshop that they put up on the forums tonight, because it is really late here, and then we can chit chat about it all then. But Jade, our 57th Warframe. On the dev stream, they confirmed her to be an angelic or a seraphim themed Warframe, so she is the light to Stalker's dark. Basically, she looks like an angel. So let's talk about the Jade Shadows update. The idea behind this Stalker themed update seems to be that DE wanted to tie up some of the stories of some of our existing characters after the end of the new war. This is a cinematic story quest from the perspective of the Stalker, his story, an enemy that of course has been chasing us, Tenno, for years throughout Warframe. Of course, with this update, we will also have Jade, like I said, who is the 57th Warframe. She is the alternate version of Stalker. Even her 3 signature weapons are the alternate versions of what Stalker's weapons are. Like I said, Rebecca described her theme as one of a chorus or angelic or seraphim Warframe, with Stalker being dark. Now, Pablo said that she is a buffing or a support-based Warframe, and we will be getting a full showcase of her and her abilities later on during May's dev stream, so next month. That's when you're going to get to see her in action. But at the minute, she is a very early work-in-progress design. This is some of her early ability animations, so they do look a little bit rough again. Work-in-progress. I'm sure that will look a lot better by the end of next month. Now, I really like the idea of Stalker being the dark bad guy, but Jade being the angelic lighter version of the Stalker, and I really can't wait to see which way these two kind of interact in that story. What's the connection between both of them? Now, like I said, she has got her own signature weapons, 3 of them, just like Stalker has his 3 weapons. This is her Eversong bow, which is an angelic bow. We don't know anything else about it except for the fact that it's a bow. This is her throwing knives, which are the Cantera, and this is her version of the Hate Scythe, which is the Harmony Scythe. So her 3 weapons are the light or the yin to Stalker's yang, if you want to. Pablo did mention that there might be some kind of connection to getting additional buffs from her if you have got her weapons equipped, or if it's from those throwing knives. She is also coming with an alternate helmet called the Auroralot helmet, which is a helmet that has an animation of it opening up. But the update is about Stalker and from his perspective, so he has to get something new as well. This is the Stalker's Terror landing craft, and it is just a Lyset skin that you can get your hands on as well. I'm sure we'll see him using it during the cinematic quest, but you're going to be able to get your hands on this, but it is just a skin, so there will be no air support with it whatsoever. Now, with this update, with the Jade Shadow update, there is also going to be a new clan operation or clan event called the Belly of the Beast. This will be a clan operation that will give us a little bit more lore in relation to the Stalker, and is coming with a brand new Eximus unit. An Eximus unit that has a green glow. A Jade Light Eximus unit. We don't know anything else about that, just that it's tied into the lore of the Jade Light, which was the Orokin's ultimate form of execution, because it just completely obliterated you and there was no coming back from it. Maybe it will just delete accounts and we can escape this madness. Jade's Shadow will also have a lot of quality of life additions, new augments for frames and weapons, changes to standing bonuses for Netrocells and Deep Archimedia, Deviri decrees, an increase in enemies for consoles, and more, as you can see on screen. The Whispers replayability, alchemy being added to the circuit missions. Basically, a chunk of quality of life addition. So it seems that the Jade's Shadow update is going to be a pretty big one. Now, before we get to the Jade Shadow update, which apparently is in June at some stage, there is that huge change coming to status effects, enemy health scaling, shield changes, armor values for enemies, and so on. For this, I'm just going to let Pablo talk from his segment of the dev stream, just so that I don't mess it up, add any kind of confusion to it, and I guess not do justice to what he was saying. So here it is.
Pablo.
Okay, so this is a long one. Let me start by saying that this hasn't gone through playtesting. We're still experimenting with things, so a lot of what I'm going to talk about might and very likely will change. So yeah, this is a long one. So let's start with what are we trying to solve? We're trying to solve several things, so this is kind of long one. I'm going to start with armor. So armor scaling has been like a wall that you hit eventually as enemies level up. You get to the point where essentially if you don't have armor stripping, the game becomes kind of like you cannot kill enemies. So we have an image.
Asset, yeah.
No.
Thank you. That's okay. A lot of assets. There it is.
So here's an example. This is actually relatively low level compared to like Deep Archimedia or what you can get on the circuit, but it's a level 200 heavy gunner. So you can see that it has 10,800 armor by default. Then you apply 10 stacks of corrosive on it, and it gets down to 2,163. And its damage reduction, that's how much of your damage gets kind of nerfed, went from 97% to 87%. So even though you took out 80% of its armor, its damage reduction only went down by 10%. So because of this, it means that for a lot of you, armor strip is either like 100% armor strip or no armor strip, and you never want even 90% because that 10% left over, because of the way armor scales, it ends up not being good enough. So basically, we're going to change this a lot. And the first change is that now armor is going to have a cap. This is for enemies only, to be clear. This doesn't have anything. This is no effect on Tenno. But for enemies, now they will have a cap as a maximum armor that they can have. So right now we're experimenting with 2700, which essentially gives them 90% damage reduction. But again, like I said earlier, this is very early, so those numbers might still change. So with the 2700, that means once you actually strip, even if it's just a 50% strip, now it's actually valuable because that damage reduction will change a lot. We are also changing the way that equation of the damage reduction is calculated. Sorry, this is math, so I'm sorry if you guys fell asleep for this part, but essentially right now what happens is that armor calculation is very bottom heavy. The first 50% DR you gain from 300 armor, and then the other 50% you gain from 300 up to infinity. So because of that is very, very bottom heavy, basically we're changing that calculation so it's a little more spread out. Again, that's just math. But basically what's going to happen, like the effect for you should be that you no longer feel that armor strip is mandated on high level. Obviously, it's still super good, because obviously if you take out 90% DR, you're basically making your damage 10x bigger. So it's really good still, but hopefully it doesn't feel mandated. And also partial armor strip now should be more viable. Those are the main two things that we're trying to address with this armor change. Now, obviously, you're probably wondering, well, once you do this, won't enemies just fall apart like a soft tissue? Yeah. Probably. So we are actually tweaking a little bit the health scaling after. So since armor is no longer going to scale past a certain point, we're looking at maybe scaling the health past that point. Not to make it equal, because making it equal would be a crazy number, but just a little bit so they are not totally destroyed. Part of that, actually, let's not go to this yet.
Not this yet.
Oh, sorry, just the quality of life, or the slide. Yeah, there you go.
So once we adjust that, we also want to tweak the corpus and the infested a little bit, so we're probably going to buff the health of the infested a little bit. And for the corpus, once they're past level 70, now they're going to start scaling the shield recharge. The idea being that right now, the shields almost feel like health most of the time because you never see them recharging. So basically from now past level 70, if you shoot them and then you stop shooting them, and you should see the shield coming back up, so that it feels more like actual shields.
So you got to break those shields.
Yeah. So hopefully it becomes more of an actual mechanic that you care about. Because right now, basically the same build that you use for the Grineer, you end up using for the Corpus and the Infested, because there's so much squishier than the Grineer that it kind of almost doesn't matter. So because of that, we're hoping basically to make the crazy high level Grineer and Corrupted not as hard, and then lift up the two factions that are way squishier at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So that's part one of the
Part one of 3.
Yeah, so part 1 of 3, and like what we hope you feel is that the all or nothing armor conversations and builds turns into a much more normalized conversation about build strategy, quote unquote. Partial armor strip is valuable. The end.
Yeah.
Armor scaling is capped. The end. Yeah.
That'd be the plan. Now, skin types. Now is the other image.
Yes.
So this beautiful graphic, which actually I messed up when I took it, and I have alloy armor twice. Sorry.
Yes.
So we have 13 types of skin types, which I'm sure you all know by heart.
I do.
And we have 13 types of damage. So that generates this beautiful matrix that you see here with all the different types. Now, for the most part, our experience is that a lot of players just don't engage with this because it's so complicated that, what is the difference between shields and proto shields? Most people never know, because the only way to know is to go to the codex, memorize which unit has what, and it just doesn't work out really. And some of the numbers are also like kind of all over the place, like a plus 15%. You're probably not going to notice, but then some are plus 75. It also causes some weird issues. For example, sometimes with a mid-level Lancer, if you strip the armor, you end up doing less damage because you probably were shooting with corrosive. So since corrosive gives you a bonus while they had armor, now because you strip the armor, you do less damage, right? So it creates a lot of weird things there that don't really add too much. So what we're doing is we do think that it's valuable to have a system like this. We just think it's so complicated that no one engages with it. So instead of making it each damage type has a multiplier for all of those skin types, now it's going to be per faction. So essentially, you'll have, for example, the Grineer are now going to be vulnerable to, and this again is all changing, but something like corrosive and slash. Let's just say those two. So now Grineer, everywhere in the game, they're always vulnerable to those two. Then, similar to that, the Corpus will have their own, which will be probably like magnetic and puncture, let's just say. Again, we're still changing all this.
Example purposes only.
For example purposes. So you'll end up only with the factions themselves having a damage type, which will help because now you can go into the star chart. I don't know if we have that.
We do, Pablo. Of course, I got you.
So instead of having to learn this in the codex and memorize it and all of that, now when you go to a star chart and you hover over a node, it'll suggest you which ones they're strong to. Again, those multipliers will be 50%, so they're good, but they're also not mandated. You can totally go without those. If your weapon does a lot of barrel and you want to just stick to your barrel slash, you'll be totally fine. But if you want to go with the suggested damage, you can go to this, and hopefully this will mean that now there's a little bit, at the very least, it'll be more surfaced, and you'll have like the ability to kind of understand, like, okay, this is what goes with this, to kind of get those combinations. So the factions, beyond the ones we're also going to have 3 new ones, which are like sub-factions that we think are important for the original factions, and that is Kuva Grineer will be special, the Amalgam Corpus, and the Deimos Infested. So those are the 3 kind of new ones that we're treating like this, and this is kind of the vibe that you should expect. So the very base factions will be the Corpus Grineer Infested. Those only have 2 vulnerabilities. Every other one has 2 vulnerabilities and 1 resistance. So that's kind of how we're going to do it. So once you're more advanced into the game and you start finding those more advanced factions, you'll also have to account for their resistance.
That's part 2.
That's part 2.
But there's part 3. Let's talk about that Glaxion choice. Why would we choose a cold weapon? Don't you think that there's some statuses that the player gets to use in game that are just overshadowed? Wouldn't it be cool if we buffed blast, cold, gas?
Well, not gas, but
Not gas, but represented gas.
represented gas. Yeah. So, basically, there's a bunch of status that. We're not kidding ourselves. Obviously, viral heat is beloved, and it's okay. We're not buffing that. I saw earlier panic when people were reading. We're not actually gonna touch your beloved viral. It's gonna stay as is, but we're gonna basically touch up the ones that are less used. And basically, starting with cold. Cold will now fully freeze enemies, and when it reaches the full freeze at full stacks, you'll see like a visual effect change of them being totally frozen. And the critical damage bonus gets doubled when you reach that max. So that's the change for that one. We're changing gas just in presentation. We're not changing anything mechanic for it, but gas is pretty invisible. There were some checks that we saw that in some tilesets you can see it. In most tilesets it's totally invisible. So we're just improving it in terms of presentation so that you can actually detect it.
If the player doesn't see it, it doesn't happen. So if you know how good gas is, but if you're using a gas weapon, you maybe feel like the AoE toxin clouds and those things aren't even, you can't even see them happen sometimes.
Yeah, I'd actually see especially on newer players, there's a lot of confusion on what does gas even do.
Yeah.
Even though it's super strong, basically it's very hard to use because you just cannot see the thing.
Well, we just need smell-o-vision, right?
Exactly.
And then Blast, the one everyone loves.
Well, we talked about magnetic too.
So magnetic, basically, the changes to magnetic so far are small because since earlier I mentioned that we want to buff the shields of the corpus, we hope that will probably lift magnetic enough. If it doesn't, then we'll do a further revision. So, but again, right now we're not touching it much other than earlier I said that the shield region is going to scale on the corpus. So right now magnetic would disable the region. But again, I don't want to,
We're waiting for playtesting a bit as well, but yeah.
And finally, Blast. I'm actually going to talk the least about that, even though it's the one that's changing the most, just because we basically have tried quite a few things and we're still changing things. So I don't want to promise anything right now because we are going to change. It's definitely going to change, but it's going to be Blasty.
That's it.
So there was a lot to take on board with all of that, and there is a dev workshop post up on the forums going over some of these proposed changes. Now, nothing is set in stone yet, and a lot could change before these get implemented. But I will make a full video going over all of that dev workshop post tomorrow, and we can, I guess, properly have a discussion about it. Now, there is an interim update coming on the 15th of May, featuring a new Nightwave, new Daybreak weapon skins, which you see on screen right now. There is a new Tenogen set of skins as well. There is the Kuva Sobek, praise be, and the Tenet Glaxian. That Glaxian is going to play into the new changes coming to that cold status proc. Can I just say that if Acid Shells doesn't work with the Kuva Sobek, then there's going to be anger. There's going to be a lot of anger. It better work with the Kuva Sobek. Now, during the dev stream, they also replayed the Warframe 99 teaser, which featured Aoi and Arthur sitting on the new Atomicycle bike, which apparently we're going to be able to use in Warframe 1999. But they didn't stop there. They also went a little bit further into detail with more images of Arthur and Aoi, like this one here by Liger Inuzuka of Arthur, and then there is this one of Aoi as well. So these are two proto Warframes, and we know that TennoCon this year is going to be the big Warframe 99 reveal event this year, where you're going to see more of 99 and what it's going to have to offer. But they also showed images of the Atomicycle with different color setups, which means we might be getting bike fashion as well. But that's pretty much all that went over for 99. Now, this is Protea Prime, which is, of course, coming next week on May the 1st. Expect a Prime trailer for her next week. But however, this is a very short teaser of that primed trailer. So, Protea Prime is coming next week with the Okina and the Velox Prime. She's coming with a new Sayandana, an Ephemera, there is an Alt Helmet. This is her in-game as well, which Megan showed off throughout the dev stream. Now, towards the end of the dev stream, Pablo did mention how semi-auto rifles in Warframe right now will soon have a setting that will allow you to just hold the trigger down, kind of like auto melee. So instead of having to constantly keep clicking your trigger or your mouse to fire those rounds, you can just hold it down. So it's kind of, I guess, an ease of access setting. But as a compensation to that, they are giving us a new mod for those semi-auto rifles, which will allow you to remove that option for the auto fire, and instead it will increase your damage and give you punch through as a trade-off. But that's pretty much the meat of this week's dev stream, or this month's dev stream. Like I said, we will go over the dev workshop in tomorrow's video. Have a great day either way. Let me know in the comment section below what you like the look of or didn't like the look of. And as always, thanks for watching.